And we're live. Welcome back to LOOPcast. Today's show brought to you by Charity Mobile, the pro-life phone company. 5% of your monthly plan goes to the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice. No extra cost. Use code LOOPcast. Thank you, Charity Mobile, for sponsoring this episode. But warm welcome to everyone here live in the chat, and warm welcome to Erica and Josh. Hope you guys had a great weekend. The country lost. The Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl, but shout out to Harrison Butker, of course. But I have to imagine.
We do like Harrison Butker, but let's be honest, the refs won again.
I'm not listening to this. I lived through Deflategate with the Patriots. Look, and this happens whenever they're the greatest team.
I don't say that about Tom Brady. He was the GOAT. He was awesome.
The GOAT. He was the GOAT.
Mahomes is a phenomenal player. I don't care for Kelsey, but he's exceptional. He's very good.
Probably best tight end ever.
And the Chiefs are a great team. It's just that they had help.
They had one call where the refs screwed up for sure.
Yeah, they get these calls. Every time there's a close call, they always seem to get them. What a shot.
All right. So here's what's crazy, and I'll cut it off here. Was it the conference championships over the weekend? That was the second most entertaining thing going on in America. And I'd say as a country run by football, most likely, that is crazy.
Maybe even third. I'm going with third.
Could not take my eyes away from the President of the United States over the weekend, starting by touching down in L.A. and torching the L.A. city officials. Public television, it's more entertaining than any reality show possibly could. And then you go right into, Sunday I wake up thinking that, how could, someone's got to rest, Sunday's a day of rest. This is crazy. We can't keep going. And Colombia decides, hey, we're going to stand up to the big man in the United States and we're going to say, no, we're not going to take the illegal criminal migrants that Trump is sending back to our country. Go pound sand, basically, to America.
Don't let the planes land, yeah.
And I don't know if they just thought that Biden was still in office, but they were not prepared for what came first. So just a quick and the timeline's important on this because
give us
I go to
summary.
mass. I go to mass on Sunday, and I see this happening. And I already saw Mexico looked like they tried this, but they said it was kind of an admin problem, whatever. Colombia really full-throated trying, we're not going to let these planes land. And I was like, oh boy, what's going to happen after this? So President Gustavo Petro decided early Sunday he'd reject the entry of these illegal migrants. And so then Trump quickly said that, or I think they said they were going to increase Colombian tariffs on U.S. goods, which, good luck with that, as there's quite a big trade surplus going on here. But then Trump pretty quickly said, you're going to take those migrants and we're going to put 25% tariffs on all Colombian incoming goods, which would be raised to 50% in 1 week. I believe he also said that they were going to revoke the visas of all the Colombian nationals.
Right.
Here from the embassy, said, we're not playing with you anymore. And then we get into Sunday. The government of Colombia has agreed to President Trump's terms, including the unrestricted acceptance of all illegal aliens from Colombia returned to the United States, including on the U.S. military aircraft without limitation or delay. The tariffs that Trump threatened are held in reserve and not signed until the president has assurance that the Colombian refugees have safely landed. I will add, too, he offered the presidential plane to come pick up these migrants because he was a little bit concerned. This all happened within an hour. And I believe President Trump was actually on the golf course while doing these negotiations. What a time to be alive. We have negotiations in the public square on Twitter while Trump is on the golf course. I cannot believe someone tried Trump on this, but here we are. And now we're back to square one.
He's on the third hole, tweets out something. By the time he gets to the eighth hole, he's already won, and Colombia buckles.
It was unbelievable. And you think that Trump didn't get some new power from Congress. This is something that the president of the United States has the authority and ability to do, has always had. And we've been so used to Biden spending Sundays on the beach for the last 4 years that just to actually see a president doing things, it's whiplash. I'm having whiplash, I have to say. And yes, Tom is blurry today. The office, just to the chat, we know Pogo's blurry, the picture's blurry. We're just glad he's with us because the office internet is out and he's on his hotspot. So
yes,
we're grateful for what we have, Pogo.
Yes.
Even if it's a blurry face.
Thank you for sticking with me. So this all goes on, and very quickly, which no surprise here. And direct quote, my new favorite quote from Donald Trump is, quote, "You can actually do things," or "You can do things." I think is the direct quote. Now, one element to this story, other than the fact that we've always been able to do this and people just chose not to, I guess, is that we had other Americans. So just to set the stage again, for simplicity's sake, we are deporting violent criminals that are Colombian nationals. Colombia says we don't want them. We say, we're going to ruin your life, basically, if you don't take these people back. They immediately take them back.
Mm-hmm.
However, at the stage of this negotiation, because it was happening so fast in the public, we had Ana Navarro from The View. And let me share. I can't even, what would make someone say this is crazy to me. Most of the flowers imported to the U.S. come from Colombia. Happy Valentine's Day, America. Harry Sison. Colombia supplies 27% of America's coffee and a huge portion of our cut flowers, roots, bulbs, and more, with Valentine's Day just 18 days away. Get ready for your morning coffee and Valentine's Day celebration to be far more expensive.
I don't understand this. I mean, like,
No, this is stupid.
like these are the arguments. Like,
Josh, these are Americans. These Americans are mad at Trump for trying to remove dangerous criminals from our country. And instead are trying to like score a point, I guess. Like this will never make sense to me.
No,
like, I would rather have more expensive coffee and Laken Riley not murdered. Like,
yeah. Or 75% of the 500,000 children who have come over the border not trafficked. I would pay more for coffee. I'd probably give up coffee if that would be the cause and effect. And to Ana Navarro, as far as like flowers go, I don't need cheap flowers for Valentine's Day. I will take a bottle of Giorgia Meloni's imported Italian wine to support Italy, but I don't need that. The trade-off, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like the people who say, it's like the same people who was saying, like the bishop last week who was like, what about the people who clean our toilets? We won't be able to afford people to pick our strawberries. I'm like, yeah, I would rather not have a slave economy and have to work harder and eat brown bread than this.
Right. It's like the Confederate senators who will pick the cotton.
So I saw this.
Free people will do that.
There's a couple elements to this too, and if for those who don't know, there was actually a trade deal done by George Bush in 2006, opening up trade to Colombia. And Theo Wald, who's former in the Trump admin, Colombia only became the source for America's flowers when American citizens were forced to stop growing after the U.S. signed a, quote, free trade deal with Colombia that devastated the West Coast flower industry. Take a drive between Pescadero and Monterey, California, and you will see the remnants of a once proud regional economy. The dilapidated greenhouses and now fallow fields were once a $4 billion industry, accounting for 65% of America's cut flower consumption. And then W. Bush rammed a, quote, free trade deal that destroyed a whole way of life for tens of thousands of American citizens. Ana Navarro and other ruling elites will tell lies to keep you subjugated to foreigners who inundate your neighborhoods with criminals, rapists, and the mentally unwell. Colombia can keep their flowers. America will grow their own.
Gee, I didn't need another reason not to like George W. Bush, but I'll take it.
But yeah,
that's right.
So art of the deal might have been a good picture into what's going on here. I've seen some interesting theories as to why the deportation numbers were actually lower initially than what were promised. If I had to guess, it was because Donald Trump was expecting a confrontation like this over a few people, and smartly over the most dangerous gang-affiliated criminals that we could deport.
Right.
And from a messaging standpoint, these people are saying we don't want them back. And so quickly, Donald Trump can make an example of Colombia here and say, hey, Colombia and the rest of the world, you're on notice. You're taking these people back. If you want to do business with the most powerful country in the world, you're taking these people back and you're keeping them.
And who could be against a homecoming? It's so wonderful.
Right. And even this works again on a rhetorical point. Why would Colombians not want their own citizens back if these citizens are so wonderful and would help contribute to their economy?
Yeah, they contribute so much to our economy. Yeah. Certainly they'd want them in their country. Great point, Tom. Love it.
I'll be thinking about this. I'm just at home sitting, thinking.
Well, and if Colombia is unsure of what to do with the criminals being returned to her streets, they could just take a page from El Salvador. They could copy that model, put them all in jail there, and they could feed the criminals in jail there instead of us doing it here or letting them out onto our sanctuary city
the
streets.
El Salvador thing.
There are solutions. There are solutions if we want to talk about
what can we do about all these criminals?
Yeah.
Put them in jail.
Yes.
Deport them.
What an idea.
So another element of this story that I appreciated over the weekend. So this was all happening so fast. And prayers up to whatever Axios low-level writer had to write this. But the mainstream news tried to catch up to this as it was happening so fast on Twitter. And not to cover from a flattering light for America to try to rid our country of these dangerous people, it is Trump's Colombian tariffs will raise the price of a cup of coffee. Got an article out at 3:32 p.m. Unfortunately, this was an hour after Colombia's president already caved and said they were going to take them back.
Yep. And there are no tariffs. And Trump's like, what a wonderful decision. We're going to trade with Colombia. It's going to be great. He was like,
Tom, they worked so hard on that article and he just tweeted it out.
Just tweeted.
Tough. Also on a minor note too,
Axios.
Caroline Leavitt, she posted on Twitter, the press secretary, and the Colombian president retweeted it. So that was basically the signal to the world, like, hey, we're all on the same page.
Yep.
This is so crazy.
It is crazy.
Oh, man. So message sent, hopefully message received. So I have people clamoring for JD Vance and Face the Nation. I will say as a preface, it was delightful. Again, a Sunday, it was like enjoying a Sunday espresso afternoon, watching him do this. If you want a look on how it went, here are all the faces that Maggie Brennan made during it.
It's so terrible. I hope no one ever does this to me on a Loopcast episode, because I'm pretty sure I make all those faces at some point during the course of our conversation.
But I mean, it was obvious. I mean, this is like literally what she's trying to do. Like, you can't really try to pretend you're going to say that now. Like, she's trying to, scold him with her body language, and he's just like not having it.
It was an embarrassing interview for her. She got schooled. Oh, man.
I mean, where do we start here?
But she didn't have the buzzer this time, right, Tom? Like in the VP debate, she could just like cut off the microphone. But there was none of that. JD had the ability to speak right back to her.
No buzzer. I'd say maybe there's some great moments, and I want to segue the final one as it involves Catholics and immigration, and JD Vance is Catholic. But I'll start with the nations of immigrants line that has stymied Republicans for how many years now?
Stymied?
A couple decades now.
You mean stymied?
Yeah. Stymied.
I think you mean it's stymied. Yeah.
It's stymied me.
Dude, I was just teaching phonics downstairs for an hour. I know, it's stymied.
All right, here we go.
A lawful permanent resident or a legal immigrant who plans to stay, your children, of course, should become American citizens. But let's say you're the child of an ambassador. You don't become.
But that's not part of it.
Well, that is an
to do
important
with
principle.
kids of diplomats.
But we're saying that carve-out should apply to anybody who doesn't plan to stay here. If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of just having been born on American soil. It's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen and you've done it the right way, and the American people in their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community, then you become a citizen. But temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children should become American citizens. I don't know any country that does that or why we would be different.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by. This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world.
Yes.
No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first, and that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
Good question.
Doesn't mean we have to have the stupidest.
That's really
good God, it's so beautiful. Just because we're a nation of immigrants doesn't mean we have to have the stupidest immigration policy ever. Bless you, JD Vance.
That's so articulate. I mean, this was something I loved about Trump picking him for VP during the campaign, because he would go on these hostile interviews like with her and just cut through the crap and just speak directly to the immediate concerns of the American people and really really enjoyed.
Well,
Really enjoyed
and
this
it's like the
conversation.
corporate press, all they have are these bumper sticker solutions and slogans, and they feel that they can just browbeat conservatives
Right.
and
We're a
Republicans
nation
into
of
silence.
immigrants.
You should shut up because we're a nation of immigrants. Like, actually, I think this policy is still stupid. Sorry, and I'm willing to debate it.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
to that
normally
point,
Republicans are like, whatever we say.
yeah.
Yeah.
And to that point, like the United States has a history of welcoming immigrants. We talked last week about, yes, we have had bad runs, the ships of the Jewish refugees in New York Harbor, 1930s. We've had bad runs. But at the same time, we have also welcomed immigrants to our country throughout history legally. There has been a legal process. Ellis Island, for all its fault, was a legal process that people went through. All of our grandparents who came here on the boats went through it legally. And I have friends right now who, because our legal immigration system is so overrun and so broken by the open border policy of the Biden administration, their work permits have run out. They have 4 children who were born here over the last 7 years, and they are now caught in a waiting game because everything has to go on pause because Biden's policy and the policy of the administrations before him so broke the working system that this young family who's been contributing to our economy and to our taxes, they have a good life, they contribute to our parish community, they're caught in the crosshairs here. And that's the point, is that the broken immigration system has hurt families. It's not that somehow, oh my gosh, Trump's hurting families. It's that the broken immigration system has left children at the mercy of traffickers. It has dumped drugs into our country. If they want someone to blame, they should be blaming the Trump administration, Alejandro Mayorkas, Kamala Harris, not Trump right now for trying to get this shit back in order.
Well, and again, I mean, we've been very generous in allowing 1 million legal immigrants to become part of our country pretty much every year since 1965. And the question is, that bureaucracy, could that be streamlined? Could that be improved? Yeah, I
Yes.
would think so, because it seems like there's such a massive backlog and it's so inefficient. Surprise, a federal bureaucracy not doing that well.
Who knew?
And so it's very frustrating to people who are trying to go through the legal process, because you just have a bunch of, hundreds of thousands, millions of people just stream across the border. That's what they did the last 4 years, and they didn't have to wait for anything. It's a disservice to the citizens of this country, to the people who are trying to enter it and become citizens legally, to have open borders for the last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean,
disgusting.
I appreciate both of your contributions. There's a lot that was exciting about that sentiment. I think the one that excited me the most was that this myth that somehow the settlers that came over from England just, stumbled into the greatest country ever built. America was obviously pioneered and settled and tamed by some of the most adventurous, brave people of all time, created in a time and a moment. And that country didn't somehow become great when we started an insane immigration policy of just
magical
letting
dirt.
Millions and millions and millions of people come to the country. Like, that was more than immigration for the entire history of our country has happened over the last 100 years, maybe 50 years.
It's not magical dirt.
No, it's not magical dirt. And
we have customs and traditions,
right. Borders, right? We created the institutions that we actually benefit from today. And out of the generosity of the American people, allowing some people to come and be a part of that, out of the prudence of those people's decision making, as it's not like we're getting strong armed by the global community to just let everyone in. It's okay. We want to create a great nation for the citizens of that country. I just think about the absolute gall of some of the pilgrims that came over, and then the revolutionaries saying, if this doesn't go the way that we want it to go, we will all be hung. We'll be shot. Our families will be killed, and our bloodlines are gone. And they took the risk to go through the American Revolution to create a land for the beneficiaries of that revolution. And what's blossomed into this global beacon, hopefully, that the world can admire and want to be a part of one day. And so J.D. Vance he didn't even make that as strong a point as I think he could. But I think the fact that someone even is hinting towards that being a reality is so
It's so refreshing.
Again, just that line is so cutting. Just because we're a nation of immigrants doesn't mean we have to have the world's dumbest immigration policy. Like, amen, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, therefore, what? We have no ability to close the door if we have too many people. I mean, like, it's just like so crazy. No, you have to leave the door open. Anyone who wants to come in can come in. Like, literally, 100 million Chinamen, you have to say yes. What? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, we're having
In the technicals.
tech issues. But this again crystallizes in "I don't care, Margret" becoming the new rallying cry. So I have
The
to
new
get to
meme.
it.
I love it.
The
You
new
gotta
meme
do
has
it.
been born. Sorry again on the
She's gonna
technical
think
stuff.
twice before she interviews this guy. I'm telling you.
I don't know. She seems pretty unaware of herself.
All right, here we go.
I think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
No, but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in
just
Oklahoma
said.
a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really
But
care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans agree with me.
I don't really care, Margaret.
I don't really care,
Actually-
Margaret.
Oh my God. And she just doesn't listen. Like he's saying, we have a vetting problem.
But the best is she totally thought this was a gotcha question. Oh no, they were vetted. Like
they were vetted. He's like,
yeah, they were. It's like, I mean, just like snarky. She thought she was still at the VP debate and she could just cut him off and say whatever the hell she wanted to. It's like, again, a total lack of courtesy. You know, when you're asking somebody a question, let them actually answer the question. You're already making these smart ass snide remarks as he's answering the question. Like, so then, yeah, you know, I don't really care, Margaret.
I don't really care, Margaret.
I do not. On the final one I want to get to before we
We lose Pogo for a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Josh,
Well,
did you have any
let me
other
introduce
favorite?
this next part as we
Yeah.
wait for Pogo to come back. Some of the biggest fireworks, certainly for us Catholics from this interview. J.D. Vance was asked about the U.S. bishops, and he had some interesting comments to say about the bishops. Do we have that clip ready now that Tom is kind of maybe not lagging right now? We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to load up this clip.
All right, I'm back.
Hey.
This is atrocious. Apologies.
We should just put a mannequin picture in here. So
Yeah, it's a good dose of humility. I'm not really sure what's going on here at the office, but actually, before we get to that one, Josh, I had one more. It's on the cost of groceries.
Oh, the groceries one.
Oh,
That's-
the groceries one was great.
The whole thing is so good for the groceries ones. Here we go.
a lot of
4
things that
days.
contributed to higher energy prices, and there was record oil and gas production.
Yes, Joe Biden did
But the price of
many
eggs,
terrible
the
things
things that
to
people
lead to an
see-
increase in prices. I agree, Margaret.
No, but all the things you experience at the grocery store are what people touch and feel. That's what you were talking about, bacon on the campaign trail.
Of course. of course.
Those things, when do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, but Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel's way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers, and that is what we're trying to fight for.
A lot of things.
You weren't able to solve the price crisis in 5 days? I mean,
She's like, but it's been 3 days. He's like, yes, it's been 3 days. It's been 5 days. And she's pushing him like, why isn't the bacon cheaper? You promised. And he has to give her like a basic economics 101. Economics for Dummies. Remember that book series? That's what I felt like this was. How does the bacon get to the store?
I mean, he's so generous actually, because it's like the temptation would be like, I didn't expect to be asked a question by a total idiot. Like, you expected us to lower inflation like 30% in 5 days? Like, what are you from Mars? Like, shut up. Like,
he was
which
very
is why,
generous.
though, I am glad that President Trump declared not just a national emergency on the border, but on energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Because it is a national emergency on energy.
All right. Are we ready to step on the landmine?
Let's step on it. Why not? It's Monday.
What could go wrong?
But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We're going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support them
about
going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. But let me just
Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing. I know that there's a lot of conservative Catholics out there who find the first part of what he said a very convincing argument. They say, look, the U.S. bishops, and their agencies are involved in a lot of the resettlement stuff. So they get contracts from the federal government to help resettle these migrants. I'm not happy with that, by the way. But they think that there's some sort of financial interest. The bottom line, as J.D. Vance says, and I'm like, here's where I might say something that will ruffle some feathers on the conservative side of things. Honestly, if the U.S. bishops decided, you know what, we're not going to do any of that resettlement stuff, we're going to hand all this that we've already done over to another nonprofit, and we're just going to wipe our hands clean of it, like, we're not going to do it anymore. Here's the thing. They wouldn't change their opinion. They still believe, most of the bishops still believe in I would consider a lax migration policy. I don't think they're doing it out of financial interest. I honestly don't. I mean, there are people who do things, who make decisions based on financial interest. I'm not blind to that possibility, of course. But I honestly do think most of these priests and bishops just think, well, we should take care of people. We should help them. I mean, like, my great aunt was a Franciscan nun. She would help out the migrants across the desert in Arizona. She did it because she really did believe in it. She wanted to help them out. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, but an open border is not actually helping, because it's creating this magnet where tens of thousands of people are trying to cross. It's very dangerous. A lot of people get put into sex slavery or work slavery. This is not a great solution. It's a very bad humanitarian situation all over. But I don't think it's necessarily that the bishops are getting a financial interest in it. They just honestly believe, like, well, there's a ton of these poor people and we should take care of them. And my thought would be, if you want to provide assistance to these people, why don't we provide the assistance in their home country so they don't make a 1,000-mile journey that's very dangerous, where they can be exploited by coyotes, put into this country, and they live in the shadows where they're not given proper, like, oh, if you say anything, we'll let INS know, or ICE, I should say now.
Right.
And they're basically under extortion, and they don't live free. That's not a good situation for the migrants at all, actually. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I would love to see, we're seeing all these statements from U.S. bishops. And I don't know, maybe there's statements coming from the bishops of Honduras and the bishops of Colombia and the bishops of Venezuela and Mexico, maybe. And I just haven't seen them yet. But it would be great to see some kind of working together so that people don't feel the need, like you said, Josh, to make this journey so dangerously. And I think too, like, I like to draw a distinction between the USCCB and then individual bishops in the country, because the fact is the USCCB it's not, it doesn't have the same authority as a bishop does over his geographic diocese. And we do have individual bishops who have made excellent statements, and not so excellent statements, and we cover those. But the Colorado bishops made a good statement on immigration coming together, and they acknowledged this is where I think Bishop Seitz lost the opportunity to speak for the bishops' conference last week. The Colorado bishops actually acknowledged the numbers. They put it out there. They're like, look, DHS since 2020 has encountered 515,000 unaccompanied minors at the border. 75% of them was reportedly sexually abused. They talk about the fentanyl, they talk about the trafficking, they talk about the coyotes in the statement. And I'm like, yes, that's what we need to be focusing on in terms of why we need immigration and border control reform. The other thing we have to talk about is that what's actually happening right now with the Trump administration. Right now, he is deporting the worst first. We don't have people going into Sunday Mass at the Hispanic parish and pulling families out of their pews. That's not happening. But what the bishops seem to be putting out, what Father James Martin seemed to put out over the weekend, is this like hue and cry that, oh my gosh, ICE is in there like ripping 3-year-olds out of the arms of their fathers.
Well, and the press release that Seitz signed off on for the USCCB was titled, "Human dignity is not dependent on a person's citizenship or immigration status."
Which no one's saying it's not.
Thanks. Like, no one is denying this. Like,
No one's
why?
denying it.
You're. I mean, it just is so irritating to have conversations where people are like, "Oh, wow, way to slay a dragon there." Like, no one was saying that. Like, what? Who's out there advocating that no one has dignity, human dignity?
Yeah. It's the same line that James Martin uses with the LGBTQ plus whatever flag. He's like, gay people are loved by God. And I'm like, no one's saying that.
Right.
Like,
Well,
I agree. We agree 100%.
But I mean, to cut through it, it's being
These
intentionally
strawman
obtuse.
arguments are so
It's
vile.
being intentionally obtuse to take a
Right.
rhetorical stance, and I find it frustrating, kind of on both sides, because it feels like there's a lot of talking past each other,
Yes.
and it would just be helpful if people were able to get together and work together here. As JD Vance has said, frankly, the USCCB has not been a very good partner in helping to enact very common sense immigration law that makes a nation a nation. Again, getting back to what we were talking about before. And I have to say, this issue's frustrated me a lot personally as an American Catholic. I'm sure many of you in the chat probably feel the same way. But Bishop Barron gave a great homily yesterday. And shout out to someone in the chat. They sent it to me. And I've been thinking a lot about it since I watched it. And a basic summary would be, he's talking about how there's this oversimplification. Some can say, in bad faith, good faith. It's up to you to decide. That walls are bad and bridges are good. And he goes and he talks about the book of Nehemiah and the rebuilding of the walls in Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile, and then the rededication of the city to God's laws. So basically there were Israelites that had never seen Jerusalem. They'd been born actually outside of Jerusalem.
In exile, right.
They'd only ever heard stories of what is Jerusalem, what is Israel, what is that people. They never even understood what it was like to be back there. And the first thing Nehemiah did when he got back there was to build a wall. Now, it's important. It's almost like we forget it because we live in this new globalist, everyone's friend type world. But ancient times, what made a city was its walls. That wasn't a weird accent to what a city was. It actually defined what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Built the wall smartly. And then you get, sorry, I want to make sure I get this correct. Ezra. So Ezra comes back and he brings the men, women, and children that are old enough to understand, and he just begins to read the laws of God and the stories of Israel, who they are. And it said it actually
The prophetic books, right?
It actually moved them to tears, the people that were there. And I think in a lot of ways, I feel this similarly, is that the city is not just, whatever is inside its walls. It's actually a spiritual thing as well. What is the soul? Who are Americans? And in this way, they were who are the Jews? Who are the Israelites at the time? And if you think about it, and he made a good comparison to here, walls not only are important for protection, but they define who you are. And if a wall gets breached, it can actually lead to death and decay. In the case of like a human body, your skin, once your skin gets breached, you start to decompose. And so he actually made an interesting comparison, as this is a very hot button, on Vatican II and being Catholic. What it means to be Catholic. In that Vatican II was so predicated upon cultural relevance that it actually led to people forgetting who they were as Catholics. They didn't learn what it actually meant to be Catholic. What moral precepts do you need to understand? What lifestyle do you need to live? What do you need to believe in order to be Catholic? Vatican II did get correct that the next stage of that is to go Christify the world. But you can't Christify the world unless you know who Christ is, unless you know what a Christian is. And in the same way, like this is all, it all made so much sense. It's all very clear. And I feel much better now after having heard it, is that for so long, you just get the oversimplification treatment of bridge, walls are bad. And I've had this kind of instinctual feeling personally of, I'm very frustrated seeing what I'm going on. It makes no sense to me to have a free-for-all policy at the border, to allow our country to be invaded, to be told that America is an idea and not a place, and that my citizenship doesn't matter.
And that the policies that Trump announced, that Bishop cites called injustice and contrary to the moral law. What exactly is contrary to the moral law? The enforcement of these thugs and criminals? I'm guessing he's not saying that. Is it remain in Mexico? That policy, really? That's what you consider? Because under the last 4 years, people would just cross into the border, and then when they get caught, like, oh, I'm pleading asylum.
Yeah,
It's like, no. If you want to plead asylum, do it at the port of entry, and then we determine whether or not we think your case merits it or not.
Right.
And in fact, what happened? 90% of the cases were erroneous. So,
Right. And I will say that on the final point, as a Catholic that wants to see my leaders successfully engage with the United States government in which I am a citizen and live, is the real pastoral guidance here is not walls bad, bridges good. It's to know when walls are necessary and bridges are necessary. And we live, obviously, so obviously, for anyone that lives in this country, that has lived in the country over the past 4 years, it's time for walls. We've had, if you look at the statistics, millions upon millions of people, many of which military-age males, many of which have perpetuated the worst kinds of abuses you can possibly think of, running rampant in our country. I think the smartest thing Trump ever did was appoint Tom Homan and send them out to go just name and shame the pedophiles, rapists, murderers that have been living in our country based upon our own country's laws. Our own country's laws enabled this. It's time for walls. And it's time to also understand what Americans are so that we can then go benefit the rest of the world. And until we do that, we're not going to get anywhere here with the bishops.
But it's interesting. We have a synodal church, right? And so like what happens is the church usually says, we want to listen. We want to understand the concerns. The Pope says we want bishops who have the smell of their sheep. This would be an opportunity for the bishops to maybe listen, because they're like, oh, no, wait a minute. It seems like our sheep here aren't happy because there's a ton of wolves invading the area. Hello, wake up, like smell what's going on and understand the smell of your sheep. Like we get that everyone has human dignity, but we still want borders and we want law and order and we want thugs and criminals expelled. And then when millions of people come to the country illegally, even if they haven't committed additional crimes, that doesn't mean we just have to let them stay. And all we hear from the bishops is like, well, they have to have dignity and we need comprehensive reform. No one buys comprehensive reform. Forget it. We're not going to do any of that crap until we actually get the border secure and laws enforced, because we don't want hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people roaming the country that we have no clue who they are.
Yeah.
No
And
allegiance
I
to
think-
Priorities, people.
I think JD Vance, just to like tie it back, I think JD Vance using the word heartbreak there, and we were talking about this before the show, Josh. I was heartbroken just watching the whole thing unfold all last week, like watching the statements come down and even watching JD Vance it's heartbreaking to listen to the shepherds say things like, you have to show them, you have to believe in their dignity. We can't be hateful. You're like, I'm not. The bishops and the people, we want the same goals in so many ways, right? We want people to have
It's like
dignity.
being told not to hit your wife. Like,
Right.
I don't hit my wife.
I
What the
don't
hell are
hit
you
my
talking
wife. Yeah,
about?
exactly. When was the last time you beat your wife? And you're like,
Right.
I don't. But Catholics of goodwill, like we want people who need asylum to get asylum. We want to save refugees who are being persecuted in Nigeria, and they want to come here to be safe from the horrible Christian martyrdoms that are happening over there. Yes, we would love to be able to welcome those people, which we are not in a position to do right now because of the whole system. People have a right to migrate to sustain their lives. The country has a right to borders to sustain its own identity, and we have to do both things with justice and mercy. We all agree on this. How we do it, we disagree. But the rhetoric coming from church leadership right now is heartbreaking because it's painting any kind of back and forth about how this needs to happen as hateful bigots versus, somehow the gentle whatever the bishop buddy is from the Episcopalian church. That's not the dynamic that's actually really happening.
And if I could, someone sent in an email, and I think it's relatable to a lot of our listeners. So shout out Cheryl. I'll read it really quick. Our local priest mentioned our bishop is doing a service next week to discuss the issue of immigration and basically toe the line. The priest today mentioned things about what they legally do/don't do regarding showing records and talking about putting people at ease, that the church is more concerned with their soul. The end of the homily was basically setting up for the bishop next week. My first thought was, well, they have churches where they come from. How else did they become Catholic? No mention of crime or compassion for the victims. I obviously vehemently disagree with this whole rhetoric and appreciated J.D. Vance's response in putting people in that interview on Face the Nation. I have plenty of my own stories of illegals having lived in Southern Colorado throughout my adolescence and 20s. I'm not really sure how to react to this upcoming political service by our local bishop here in Arkansas. Do I skip next Sunday? Do I sit through it and bite my tongue? Do I mention something to him afterward or send an email in response? I'm praying about it, but thought it might be fun to hear your thoughts.
I think you should go.
Yeah, go.
I think you should be respectful, and then you should, speak to him afterwards. It is kind of funny though, like you mentioned that Anglican bishop woman that scolded
The Episcopalian
Trump and Vance or whatever, Episcopalian bishop. Yeah. So my mother sends a message to her 3 children about, hey, here's where you can send a letter of encouragement to this Anglican bishop about what she said.
I got the same email.
I don't think so, Margret.
Yeah.
It's literally her name.
I don't care, Margret.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's the time and place for things. If I were invited as the vice president or president of the United States to a church service and harangued and lectured at, I would get up and I'd walk off. But if you're going to this event, what the bishop's going to speak about, and he's not like inviting you as, like the governor or something like that, just to scold you. Yeah, I would go. And I would politely push back afterwards. Yeah.
Channel your inner JD and just calmly, politely, but say, here's the other side of the story.
Yeah.
I'd say go. I mean, even
do bishops care that so many of the Catholics in the pews think they don't care about enforcement? Does it matter to them? It should.
Yeah, here's the thing too, is part of even the reason we do this show is we're just normal people. This is a very relatable situation. Like all of us potentially could be in this situation. And the hope is that the conversations we're having here might arm you or make you feel a little bit more comfortable in your beliefs, because everything we said here is not an evil, non-Catholic position to hold or thoughts to have. These are real conversations happening. And this is what's so exciting to me about like covering politics in America at this time. It's like we are more involved than maybe ever with J.D. Vance as the Catholic vice president. And so I don't think you have anything to run from or anything to be mad about. The positions we discuss here are very logical and reason-based, and you should go up to the bishop afterwards. And who knows, maybe the bishop surprises you and says, what you didn't expect. But this is part of what having a dialogue means, is you go and you listen, and then you get to go give your thoughts, and then they get to hear you out. And the reality is with all of this, and we talk about this all the time here, is the USCCB will catch up to wherever the country moves. And I have a suspicion here that Trump and J.D. Vance are going to do what they want to do regardless. And there's going to be a point where what happens in the country is so good that it will become fashionable to be virtuous in terms of justice and enforcing our laws here. And they may eventually come around to that. If they don't, too bad. But I say you move first, see where the bishops follow. You can't wait for them to be like, oh, yeah, now I totally see the light and whatever. You set the example, you make it happen, and then things will come.
It does remind me of the early 1980s when the U.S. bishops were issuing all these statements calling for nuclear disarmament, and they were so angry that President Reagan was going to send us into some sort of nuclear war. And my uncle turns to my aunt, and their brother-in-law, sister-in-law, they're not siblings themselves. And he says, well, and he wasn't trying to be too much of a jerk about it, but he's like, you guys were all protesting all that time, and the bishops were all on your side with that stuff. But turns out Reagan was right, wasn't he? actually. Like
Turns out the
disarming
Berlin
yourself
Wall
wasn't
came
the
down.
answer. And actually allowing the Soviet Union to collapse was a good thing for humanity, and I wasn't it. And my aunt, who's professional liberal, was like, didn't have much to say. But I love them both. They're both my godparents. So
Sweet. So before we get into that, I did want to bring up we're still doing we're still supporting the case, right, Josh? Stop coerced abortion.
absolutely.
Still rolling. We'll
Yeah.
share
Boy,
real quick.
this is probably the most important legal case involving abortion right now in the whole country. And the women that have stepped forward on this have been just amazing and courageous. Some of them give their full name. Some of them they just do their initials, which is fine. Legal testimony. They verified their identities and stuff like that. But these women who just said they felt like if any one person would have shown them some compassion or given them some assistance, they wouldn't have chosen abortion, but they felt like they had no choice. They come in for the abortion. They sign this paperwork that weighs away all of their rights, and they just felt like they were forced to abort their child. One woman was, we think we mentioned it the last time, stuck in her car. Her boyfriend made her sleep overnight in a car, and this is in Minnesota in the winter, freezing, and she was just like, until finally he says, until you agree to go get an abortion, I'm not going to let you back in. Like, what feminist is saying this is a great thing for her?
That's liberation,
like
right?
That's her rights. Like, even if you think abortion should be legal, there's no way that Planned Parenthood should have went forward with that abortion under those circumstances when she was obviously coerced. And so this is a very important case. We have a wonderful donor that said he would match every dollar that anyone wants to give to this, help these women with this court case, up to $500,000. And so we've done really great. I think we're about 60% to our goal.
We're just over 300,000. Right.
What do we got? About 48 hours left. So I'm asking for some of our loopcasters who are listening.
Yeah.
You really want to make a difference. Is there a way? Maybe you got $100, that becomes $200. Or some of our people who are even more blessed, if you have $500, that becomes $1,000. So we just ask. We have emails coming out today and tomorrow. Encourage people to pray about making a sacrificial gift to help these women, to stand in solidarity with them, because this is a huge thing. We want to make sure people understand that a lot of the women that get an abortion, it's not really a quote choice. They don't feel like they made this freely of their own will. There's a lot of boys, friends out there, husbands, fathers, a lot of men who have truly failed women in disgusting ways that kind of basically force and coerce these women to get abortions. And we want to shine the light on these brave women who are trying to take a stand.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amen.
Sweet. So do we hit?
So many choices.
I have so much more here. We can go right into the Twilight Zone. I'm not sure. Quick hitters. Let's do quick hitters. So Pete Hegseth and Chrissy Noem confirmed. They made it through. Yeah. Now, Josh, I know you share. You hold on to some affinity for Mitch McConnell.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
Mitch McConnell flips and says he's going to vote and doesn't vote for him. It didn't matter anyway. J.D. Vance breaks the tie. Now, can we just...
It should not have happened that way.
He needs to go. First off, he's so old. It's like, why do these people...
How does he even know what he's doing?
They're intent on dying in office. It's so disgraceful to me.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to run for re-election next year. I think
better
he's just going to let his term end. But yeah, that still means, we've got nearly 2 more years left of him.
So essentially, he decided not to vote for him because he wanted to keep his Raytheon checks, or I
guess so. Here's the thing, though. When people get, I hear all this chatter, we're going to primary this guy. We're going to primary this. We're going to primary that. Go ahead and primary Mitch McConnell. That's fine. I mean, the hope might be that he just decides not to run for re-election, then opens up the whole primary to somebody else younger. It'll probably be Daniel Cameron or something like that. Then there's somebody, we got a primary Susie Collins up in Maine. I'm like, I got to tell you something. If you defeat her in the Republican primary, the Democrat candidate will become the next senator. Yeah. So Maine needs another 6-8 years before you can get enough of a Republican bench to be able to take her out, because whatever. But Alaska, that Nepo baby Murkowski, that pro-abortion Catholic Republican, I would love to see her defeated. And I've tried to do everything I can. There was somebody that was thinking about running against her in the primary, and I was like, yes, please. And then they changed the law and all this stuff with the she's like the cold you can't kick. I can't stand her. She's horrible.
But we got Pete. We got Pete in there.
We got him in, and I will never forget Mitch McConnell getting on the Senate floor and telling Americans, while we all, ravaged by different disasters and the economy was terrible. And he said the number one priority for America is sending as much money to Ukraine as possible. Now, why? Not because it was morally the right thing to do, but no, it's actually good for you, America, because the money that we actually send to Ukraine is going to come back to America in form of giving money to Lockheed Martin.
Somebody's got to build these tanks. Yeah.
Someone has to build tanks, and we're going to do it in America. It's going to create jobs. While putting Ukrainian men in a meat grinder and just using them as cannon fodder. Okay, but no, it's great because we're going to make money. And that was the moment. I was like, he's gone. He's dead.
I know. He's totally done the same way. The thing is, when it came to the NASA, the space program, how many of the 435 House districts contributed something in manufacturing for the space program? Do you know how many of them?
No.
435. That was the whole idea. Like literally have every district involved. Therefore, no one's going to be against it. That's the same thing with the defense stuff. Like they make sure that they got jobs in every part. Oh, if you do this, there'll be 100 jobs in your district. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing.
So I'm looking forward to Pete Hegseth and JD Vance, who put him in there, two soldiers themselves, to just completely shake up what's going on there. And I remember someone put out a tweet who's like, wow, this person got confirmed 93-0. This person got confirmed by all these numbers. And Pete Hegseth barely got in by a tiebreaker. What does that say to the confidence in these people? I'm like, this is not the dunk you think it is. Like, we want the change. America voted for the change. We're done with the bi-party stuff.
Well, who will think about the defense contractors, Tom?
Those poor defense contractors.
I guess, man. I mean, look, like this is not even dunking on defense contractors in total, but like, yes, we need good defense contractors. They cannot run rampant over American policy the way that they've done over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's done. We're in a new era, and no one better to do this than JD Vance and President Trump, who run on a platform of peace and unifying, and not just being a part of forever wars forever to just bring money back for no reason. So I was mad at McConnell on that one. I cannot wait till he's gone. Kristi Noem, I don't feel as strongly about. I feel like it's going to be a wait and see with her. I wasn't super thrilled about that one. And then we have.
I think she's just a spokesman, and that Tom Homan's going to get the job done.
Yeah, as he has been. And then
they literally he pulled a guy out who's from Thailand, who is a child.
I watched
rapist.
that. Right, Dr. Phil was there.
Went in on the raid.
I was going to be my Twilight Zone, but I cannot. It's all good. I cannot believe what I was watching. I'll get to that.
Roll the tape. Roll it.
Well, I'll say so. The two coming up this week, and we're going to be covering on the show is Tulsi Gabbard and the infamous RFK Jr.
RFK, Bobby K. And Kash Patel too. Kash Patel is also. I think that's going to be fun.
I think Kash has the easiest path. I think it's going to be harder for Tulsi and RFK Jr. But yeah, so my Twilight Zone, Dr. Phil.
What?
So
Dr. Phil.
I will say before I get into this, my new favorite follow on Twitter is the ICE Twitter account. I think I may have brought this up, but they run a live ticker of all the people that they arrest. They'll just be enforcement update, January 26, 2025, 956 arrests, 554 detainers lodged. It's the best. Every day they just put out like, yep, we got these people, and then they'll say all their crimes, and it's just the best. I can't look away from it. However, I want to do this so bad, and maybe I will. Maybe that's my next Tom in the Wild video, doing a ride along with Tom Homan in Chicago, none other than Dr. Phil. The audio is horrible on this. I mean, I'll play it, but we'll see how far we get.
Say the what? You have a person that thing.
Sir.
Say the.
See if we can get to Dr. Phil.
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna talk about lawyer.
Yeah. Are you a citizen?
It's Dr. Phil.
My mom's a citizen.
Your mother's a citizen?
Yes.
But you're not?
Nope.
But you've never been deported before?
You Dr. Phil. You look like Dr. Phil.
Yeah? How do you know me?
No, I seen Dr. Phil, you know, on TV.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is an example of sanctuary cities, right? We got an illegal alien convicted of sex crimes involving children, and he's walking the streets of Chicago. Again, the downfall, the problem with the sanctuary city, that people like us walking the street rather than local law enforcement working with federal agents. This is what we're dealing with.
So this guy,
sanctuary for child rapists. Okay.
Yeah. So this guy, Thai citizen, had been committing sex crimes with children. And my favorite part of this, though, is when he's like, so what have you done? And he's like, I've seen you before. Where? On Dr. Phil. It's just Dr. Phil. Why is Dr. Phil on these raids? It's so insane. Like, imagine being in a country, getting deported, and looking up, you're like, it's Dr. Phil. Got him. So Tom Homan, I think we'll build statues of him one day. I'm not kidding. The amount of dangerous child predators that he's gotten out of our country so far has been incredible.
Well, I think actually, if this all works, you know, the Trump administration gets the job done and expels some of these people who are in the country illegally, who have done a lot. Not all of them are criminals. I get that. But if he actually, you know, restores law and order and gets a lot of these people who are in the country illegally, I think people look back and be like, how are the average middle class voters like so bending over backwards kind, you know, when all this stuff is going on, you know, people, I mean, and only to be lectured at by too many of our shepherds, too many of our reporters, every one of our elites, like they don't give a crap. Like it's just, it's amazing actually how kind and decent Americans are, despite being lectured at for this idiocy that we experience.
Well, Josh, I'm happy to report that with J.D. Vance at the helm, the days of Catholics in office and in public life just rolling over when they hear, well, welcome the stranger as the robust Catholic social teaching theological argument against getting pedophiles out of our country. I'm done. That never worked on me. It's especially not going to work now. I'd say that the average person now feels that way. It's over. It's so stupid. I even saw someone on this show, I think it was on like Twitter comments, like, well, it doesn't follow Catholic social teaching. I'm sorry, what about deporting pedophiles doesn't? It's like it's such an obtuse. It's not even specific and not productive as well. Back to working together.
It's literally they put their fingers in their ears, la 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 la, when they shout these bumper sticker stuff. Right. I mean, like, what are you talking about?
I guess the hard thing, and I keep getting back to this, is that I actually want solutions, and I actually want to work with people
and constructive debates.
Right, and it just feels like there's no will from certain individuals, probably on maybe more my side of the fence too, but especially with a lot of these like liberal Catholics that just, the people that cheered when Colombia wouldn't take back its violent gang members. How do you even have a dialogue with people like that? Like you hate me so much. You're not even willing to like sit as an American and discuss maybe why this would be positive. And this was all after they already caved. So maybe that's what frustrates me. And I have to say, as Brian goes on to higher heights as a Vatican ambassador, I was struck by something he told me. He said he's most excited to actually work with people that maybe had preconceived notions about how he approached things, that he was some kind of MAGA nut.
Right.
And I'd say that actually really kind of trickles down through the organization, hopefully. And I know we get on here and we talk and we yell and we get frustrated, whatever. But I assure you, like, I want to start meeting people that maybe are on the other side, but are American and care about the country and actually have constructive conversation instead of just the finger pointing you hate. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know when we'll get that, but I really want that. And I'm not just blowing smoke. Like I actually really love that.
I forget who said this, but someone once quipped that, you know, people would rather feel informed than do the work to be informed. And I think that that's part of the struggle, to have these actual dialogues where you point to particular policies and actual facts of what came after what, and like what's the cause and what's the effect and what's the philosophical underpinning of this. It's really hard to find people who want to do the work with you to have those conversations, because you have to do work, you have to inform yourself, and it's easier to just feel righteous and say Catholic social teaching says that, or the bumper stickers, or we're a nation of immigrants and all that. It actually takes work, and I think there are people who want to do the work and find meaning and find real solutions. It's just a matter of discovering where they are and letting the rest roll off your back, because there's some crazy stuff out there. It's hurtful.
Right. And sometimes you just got to do the right thing and let them scream and piss and holler. And then a few years later, when things are back to normal, like, okay,
remember
we did this despite your temper tantrums.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Erica, what you got?
I have two things. I have an international update and I have a local news update. So let's start with the local news update. Do you see the Connecticut one there?
I do.
Yes, you do. Okay, Connecticut news. So it turns out, and I just wanted to, after Margret talking about how they were all vetted and all of that, well, it turns out that in his pardoning of all these nonviolent drug offenders, Biden actually pardoned a Connecticut man who was convicted of killing an 8-year-old boy and his mother, who were in witness protection. This man was a drug lord. He got in there. He was convicted of these two things, and he was serving life in prison here in Connecticut. It turns out, how you ask, did he end up on the list of nonviolent drug offenders? And why did the Biden administration not check the list? The list was from the ACLU. They put this man on a list that they handed to Biden's staff. And without asking any questions, Biden's staff just took the ACLU's list and said, they're all pardoned. And now this man is walking free. The family is outraged. Even my Senator Blumenthal said, hey, hang on, wait a minute. He said, gosh, someone dropped the ball. This was a vicious murder that changed our Connecticut state laws. And now this man is just out. So no, Margret, I don't trust anyone who has been vetting these lists of people, and including this one. So absolutely outrageous last minute.
Don't worry. CNN is still upset about the J6 stuff and not this. They don't mention this at all.
This did not even surface when they were looking back at the Biden legacy.
I did see that Blumenthal, I think, didn't he introduce legislation to make people clarify why they're giving pardons now or something like that?
I think he's on that team. Yeah, he's on the team. Yeah, because this is absolutely outrageous. And as it affects the communities that the Democrats here in Connecticut purport to represent most. And it's absolutely.
This just makes me think whether or not the pardon should be absolute.
Yeah.
Because if you had a situation where even if you had a very, very strict high amount, like 3/4 of the House and Senate could overturn a pardon. In that case, you could put that up for a vote. People could be like, yeah, maybe we don't.
Maybe that was not really a good idea. So anyway, so thanks, Biden. International update, little more upbeat here. Everyone wants to know what's going on with Greenland. So the president, the president had a 45-minute phone call this weekend with the Danish premier, Mette Frederiksen. I can't say anything in Danish. And the White House hasn't commented on the call, but Frederiksen said that she emphasized to the president that her Arctic island is not for sale, and noted that Trump still has a, quote, big interest in it. Senior officials who were briefed on the call added that Trump was aggressive and confrontational following these comments that the island was not for sale. He does plan to annex Greenland. This is coming from the senior officials. And they said, it was horrendous. Another added, it was a cold shower, which for people in the Arctic climes, I thought that that's what they do. It's cold. Like they go out polar bearing and
they live in the cold
sauna. So I don't know. It was a cold shower. So apparently the intrigue is that Greenland is still in Trump's sights. He is very serious about acquiring that territory. And the Danes, there's something fishy in the state of Denmark. That's what I'm going to end on there.
All right.
I just had to update you on Greenland. I'm going to continue to update you on Greenland.
Well, speaking of cold weather and snow and all that, it's just amazing that there was a lot of snow in Florida even. Someone put out this statistic here I thought was pretty interesting. In fact, the city of Tallahassee on the panhandle of Florida had more snow, 2.1 inches, than Florida State had wins this season.
Ouch.
That's tough.
Oh,
We have a Seminole on staff too. So.
I did share with her. She's like, "Dang,
sorry,
ouch."
Allison.
But we talked a lot about JD over the weekend with me, Face Nation. Excellent interview. But I just wanted to spotlight this clip he made from the March for Life. And my daughter was there. She said it was really awesome.
My daughter was there too.
She's like, I got within 50 feet of the stage. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, let's roll it.
And I want beautiful young men and women who are eager to welcome them into the world and eager to raise them.
Make more babies. Look at the sign.
And it is the task of our government to make it easier for young moms and dads to afford to have kids, to bring them into the world, and to welcome them as the blessings that we know they are here at the March for Life. Now, it should be easier to raise a family, easier to find a good job, easier to build a home to raise that family in, easier to save up and purchase a good stroller, a crib for a nursery. We need a culture that celebrates life at all stages, one that recognizes and truly believes that the benchmark of national success is not our GDP number or our stock market, but whether people feel that they can raise thriving and healthy families in our country.
That's it.
There you go.
That's it. He gets it.
And that.
You want more, Josh, or is this good?
No, that's good, man.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well,
I'll take 8 years of this guy after 4 more years of Trump.
Speaking
Let's
of
great.
insane reactions to that, did you see what the left thought about that statement?
Oh no, Handmaid's Tale all over again. Gilead.
Maybe I'll
Sorry
to tack on here, but the Nazis wanted more babies too.
Oh my god.
Like, who doesn't want more babies?
Predictable.
Actually, that's what I want to know.
Babies are
so much
fun.
that they barred married women from working and creating the Cross of Honor for the German mother. So,
I mean, this is their playbook. I mean, if they want to keep with this, oh well, we disagree with you, therefore you're Nazis. Like, what?
So I have two problems with this. So I have two elements to this. I think one, it'd be interesting if we just instituted a rule that you can no longer make Nazi comparisons to prove your point. I think would be probably productive to the public discourse. But number two, in some ways, I want it to continue because they keep doing it and it doesn't work. Like they didn't learn over the last cycle that they should just maybe call people Nazis harder and like that will win. That'll really win people over. They didn't learn that lesson and they just keep doing it now. We got the Elon Nazi salute and then we got this. So.
Right. It turns out that calling more than half the country fascists and bigots and hateful deplorables doesn't actually win them over to your side.
Yeah, shocking.
Keep going.
But it's people on the internet are familiar with this. It's Godwin's law, where the more and more you argue online, eventually someone will say, you're Hitler, you're Nazi. It's just inevitable. And like the idea that some people say, well, internet culture doesn't matter. Like, no, people are on the internet. This matters. And so
it does matter.
The mainstream Democratic Party is invoking this left and right and all. I mean, like Elon Musk, he makes this kind of goofy thing. And obviously he's hailing Hitler. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I honestly, I get that you say it, my concern, though, is eventually the Democrats will come back to power, and I want them to be soundly defeated so that they move away from this garbage. I'd love to have two parties that say, what can we do to make it easier for families, for young people to raise a family? I want two parties that are saying, what can we do to drive down the price of energy and make things more affordable? But we don't have that right now, and we have a problem.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the message that I've gotten so far is that, and the clip from the JD Vance interview that I didn't get to play that was maybe kind of low-key my favorite, was that the American people should expect more from their government.
Yes.
They should expect that if there's a disaster, they're going to get food and water. They should expect that if there's a fire, they're going to have water in the fire hydrants. The American people for too long have internalized that they should just expect nothing from the American government, or less than nothing to be attacked. And so there's that. And then there's also his message of wanting to live in a country where it's easier to raise babies. It's easier to make families. It's easier to live. And think about how different that is from the message of the last 2 years. The message of the last 4 years is, how can we make it as easy as possible to kill your babies?
Yeah.
And that was their big, like, we're going to win. This is what we're going to do. We
got to
make
trans
it as easy as
kids.
possible
We have to have
kill your
drag
babies.
shows on military bases. It's like, what? That's
We have
why
to make
Trump's
it easier
most
to come
effective
over the
mind
border. Right.
Yeah.
is calling for a revolution of common sense.
Welcome to the
Amen to
golden
that.
age of America, baby.
Do it.
We're here. Hopefully the golden age of America includes fixing Wi-Fi in our office space. I apologize to everyone who had to suffer through my
His
very
blurry
pixelated picture. Hopefully my message got across. But if you want to help out the show, you can go ahead, subscribe over at the YouTube. We appreciate it. Leave a like. Thank you to everyone joining live in the chat. Especially appreciate you guys. If you want to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that goes a long way. We appreciate it. So support our sponsor, Charity Mobile. If you want to help out, stopcoerciveabortions.com. We have that in the chat as well. But yeah, best thing you do is pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Fidelis.